Great-granddad, when the West was young, he bought his dough with a wagon tongue. The times were rough when the Redskins mocked, and he said his prayers with his shotgun cocked. He was a pioneer, tough and grim. Danger was duck soup to him. He ate his corn, bone, bacon, fat, but his great-grandson would have starved on that. Great-granddad was a busy man. He cooked his grub in a frying pan. He picked his teeth with his hunting knife. He wore the same suit all his life. 21 children came to bless the old man's home in the wilderness. But great-granddad, he didn't lose heart. His kids hunt rabbits and they catch right smart.
21 necks he had to scrub, washed 21 shirts in the old wash tub, cooked 21 meals 3 times a day. No wonder grandma's hair turned gray. Well, she worked all night and she slept all day. She worked all day and she slept all night, which seems to me was just about right. With great-granddaughter, it's the other way. She's up all night and she sleeps all day.
The Vagabond Kid deal come from a guy in Fargo. And give me the name because the Vagabond King was the big show, big movie. The Vagabond King was shown in the theater right across the street from the radio station. That's where he got the idea. And I looked like a kid, you know, about that time. And Slim Jim got the name down in Omaha, and because he was real slim, he was thin.
There's a guy in Minnesota that you should know. He's not the square and he's not the schmo. There's a twinkle in his eye, and I tell you why. When he does the rumba, he's a real gun guy. He's a Scandinavian hotshot. He's a hotshot from Duluth. He's a Scandinavian killer-diller. For the polka, he don't give a hoot. He's got the herringbone suit and a lute.
The Iverson brothers, Clarence and Ernest Iverson, Slim Jim and the Vagabond King, were quite famous entertainers. They traveled around a lot, and they did a lot of work on radio too, and were really famous through their radio work.
The radio stations all had their 2 or 3 regular entertainers on their program, on their payroll, you know. We, Slim and I, always had our own sponsors that we brought to the station. That's how we stayed on the stations, you know.
You found both Norwegians and Swedes on these programs, and there was sort of an American Scandinavian stereotype that developed out of this. It was somewhat a combination of both the Norwegian and Swede, I suppose. They talk about the Scandinavian.
Den mest kjente var kanskje Olle Skrathult, som ble veldig berømt på visa Nicolina, som jeg tror solgte i grammofonplater over 100 000 plater i løpet av nok så kort tid.
And I studied it and got it kind of fixed up into our type of Norwegian instead of actual Swede. So we could sing it and all the old Norwegians around could understand it.
Att vara kär, det en ryslig pina. Jag som har prövde siger icke nej. Jag var så ryslig kär i Nicolina, och Nicolina lika kär i mig. Om hennes hånd var jag till hennes pappa, och fick ett svar jag inte väntar på. Aldrig har jag gått ut på någon trappe så ryslig hastig som jag gjorde då.
The entertainers that traveled in those days would do humorous skits, and the Norwegians loved it because they would laugh hysterically at themselves, really.
And of course Torstein Skarning was another one he was talking about, and that type. Yeah, he sang, and then they played Norwegian dances and old-time dances and polkas and stuff.
Disse kunstnerne arbeider ikke innenfor et snevert norsk, men et skandinavisk miljø. Det var nettopp på dette området at man kunne ha en felles skandinavisk kultur. Og i bymiljøet var det muligheter for dette på grunn av at der hadde de lokaler beverkningssteder som ville ha sang og underholdning.
Oscar Svensson bought a new car. Couldn't buy gas, so he didn't go far. Squid, squat, squadoolian. Squadoolian squat. Hardy, hardy, hardy. Hardy, hardy, hardy. Went down to the city. For a pair of new shoes. Came home barefoot. With a bottle of booze.
An area in Minneapolis on Cedar Avenue, there were so many Scandinavians living there that it was called Snus Boulevard. And there were a number of places there where you could hear Scandinavian musicians playing. And these people that I mentioned now used to play in those halls and taverns, Dania Hall, for example.
It was the beginning of Seven Corner District. There was 7 or 5 streets or something coming in together there. And it was mostly all Norwegian. I played one nightclub there for a couple of years. It was owned by a Norwegian. And then, of course, we could announce that on our radio program, and we got the advertising from it. Of course, it didn't pay much like it does now. But we were making money when other people weren't, you know. A couple of farm boys.
Krok, 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 sa høna på haugen. Krok, 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 sa høna på haugen. Pålan sprang og vrengde med augen. Nu tør jeg ikke komme hjem til å mål. Jeg ikke kan å frørpe, ikke kan å... Ja, grammer jeg borte, vet du. Det var väl allt jag kunde huska.
My grandfather, Iverson, came from Hallingdal. My grandmother and I think that her older sister came over in about 1862. But my grandmother lived with us for quite a while here on the farm out in southwest of here.
Their mother died when they were quite young, and they had a housekeeper named Molly that came from Norway to live with them, and she played guitar and taught them a lot of Norwegian songs.
Lord.
En gang da det brant i det hus hvor vi bor, høster, krøtter og allting var brent, men høyest på fjellet satt kjerringa så glad. Med gitaren på halsen, hun skravla, hun sang. Julia, 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 Julia. They came with their buckets and they came with their pumps. They couldn't save nothing, not even a stump. But up on the mountain, the old woman sat, the guitar in her lap while she strummed and she clapped. Julia, 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 Julia.
She sang it on there and played it on her guitar then, I remember. And that was way back in 1914 or 15, something like that. 29, I went to Fargo and got a job there on the radio. Played, I don't know how many months. And I went to Minneapolis and I met my brother there. He'd been in Omaha all this time, down in Texas and stuff. And so I hadn't seen him for about 10 years. I heard him on the radio and went up to the radio station, and there he was.
Well, Slim, you know, you've been gone quite a bit lately, and we've had a lot of requests for I Don't Give a Hoot. Now, I wonder if you could do that for us this afternoon. I know the folks would like to hear it very much.
Well, I don't give a hoot if I do.
Here it is, I Don't Give a Hoot, Slim Jim.
My wife, she said, now, Ole, do you think that this is cute? There's not a button left on the front of your union suit. I said, sew up the front of it just like a flour sack, and I'll go in and out by way of the trapdoor in the back. I don't give a hoot, I just don't give a hoot. We got plenty of trouble, but I just don't give a hoot.
His music was a synthesis of American country music and Norwegian music. He was almost at the time of the Carter family and Jimmy Rogers and some of the early American country singers, the birth of American country music. He wasn't not long after these early pioneers, but they were real colorful characters. They had quite a following.
Oh, we were just plugging away, that's all we did. We didn't make no big splash. We made a good reputation in Minneapolis and St. Paul, in that territory, that's all.
I've heard of Finnish people, for example, that could not understand either English or Norwegian that wouldn't miss Slim Jim's program. He just had a warmth to his voice that people responded to.
I found the valley of the drifting, whistling snow between two great big snowbanks when I opened my door next morning. And for hours and hours I wandered aimlessly through the snow, seeking the answers to the many questions that was racing through my feeble brain. Where was everything?
There was everything.
Where was the
There was my sidewalk, my driveway, my oljelappi. At last I was all pooped out. So I took a shoe, snus, and scratched my head and wondered where to go. Then all at once I realized I was a prisoner here in the valley of the drifting, whistling snow. Then my wife, she whispered to me, I got to go to Ladies' Aid, shovel out that old jalopy, as she handed me the spade. Now the settlers and the miners fought those crazy Navajos, but I tell you that was nothing like that drifting, whistling snow.
So in '48, then I quit entirely. I had already started my nursery, little nursery, north of Minneapolis, Highway 65. Oh, well, why did you start a nursery? Why didn't you stick to radio? Some people said they come out to see me out there. I was planting some perennials I'd sent for, and I said, well, here I sit. Plant these perennials. They never argue with me. They never talk back. They're very congenial. Lots more satisfaction in this than argue with people in town.
I've been playing banjo since I was probably 7th grade. I started playing rhythm banjo with the Scandinavian bands. Then later for many years now, I guess 15, 20 years, I've been making a living playing banjo. Not so much Scandinavian, but playing ragtime and jazz, working with Dixieland bands. father played violin. His father had played violin also. And my uncle played piano. And when the neighbors came visiting, they brought instruments. And my father also played trumpet. When his grandmother, who was from Song, when she lived with them on the farm, she did not allow the violin to be played in the house because the violin had connotations of evilness, being associated with the devil. But of course, his grandmother was very old then, and of course after she died, well then they brought the violin back into the house.
Auto passive alarm system, silent paging alarms, auto ignition kill alarms, digital alarms, and remote control alarm systems. Complete systems installed begin at $150.
You bet. How's Florida?
Oh, fine.
Good.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Phil.
all right.
Yeah. How have you been?
Feel good.
Good. Will you sit down?
Yeah, thank you.
I haven't seen you for a while.
No. I've been busy on that, working on that article on the Aku's concert company.
Oh, have you?
Yeah. And I had a few more questions to ask you, too.
Okay.
The early entertainers, the Scandinavian entertainers in Minnesota. One of the most famous groups, I guess, was the Daniel Aku's concert company. Daniel Aku's a fiddler. He is the son of Ivan Aku's from Bygland, Setesdal. Now this is the old fiddle of your father.
That's right.
Uh-huh.
Ivan,
the Strömsing violin, huh?
Ivan Aku's brought it to him.
Right, I remember you telling me about that. The old Strömsing violin from Norway, wasn't it?
Very old. This was made by gypsies.
Oh.
In Germany, and then brought to, and Grandpa Ivan was keeping track of it because he wanted to get that from my dad.
Oh.
And then my dad had to practice every day, and his brothers, he had some brothers, and he was given a choice of either chopping the wood or playing the violin or practicing.
Oh.
And he always preferred practicing the violin.
I would have taken that choice too, I think.
I think so.
And Dan Akus and his family traveled all around the Midwest, or mostly Minnesota, for maybe 15, 20 years, entertaining.
Started when I was 4 years old.
Yeah.
First dance I did was the Schottis.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh. 4 years old, that was pretty young.
Yeah.
And I understand you traveled mostly in the summer then when you weren't in school?
In the summertime, the folks went out all winter, all year, except for January and February. Then they came back and boarded us out. And then in the spring, all four of us would go. And then Dad would camp us someplace. We'd put up the tent in the car, and then he'd go on to little towns ahead and put up the posters and advertise and get the hall set up. Sometimes it was a church, sometimes it was a school, and wherever we could give a concert.
This was the main kind of entertainment for people to go to town and see a show, a vaudeville show, or hear a Scandinavian group coming through.
Well, I whistled, sang, gave readings, and played the piano a little bit. And then my brother and I played a few duets.
Oh.
And we did a dance, I think it was the Schottis together.
Yeah.
And we both had costumes. Mother made all our costumes.
I see. I know you're a very good whistler, and you whistled for me once. What kind of tunes did you whistle? Do you remember any of those
Well,
tunes?
it was all semi-classical.
Some of the semi-classical
Yeah.
tunes. I wonder if I could get a little recording of you. Could you think of a tune you could just whistle a little bit?
Well,
I don't have anything to accompany you, but you used to work with piano accompaniment.
right.
Yeah.
Well, when Dad was playing his solos
Yeah.
on the stage,
Yeah.
Mother playing,
Oh.
and I'd be in the back, and I'd start whistling, and my mother'd say, "Shush, babe, shush, shush,
Oh.
quiet."
Yeah.
I couldn't resist whistling all his violin pieces.
Daniel Akerus, han var god i spillet. Og så når vi kom sammen med Daniel, så spiller vi for han, og han spiller for oss. Ja. Og så har vi mye mål oss her. Det var mye klassiker han spiller også. Jeg klarer lige for han spiller de der all time. Det var bare norsk han spiller. Springere og gangere og slikt noe. Men
It seems when the immigrants came here from Norway, they played the old folk dance tunes a little to begin with, the Halling and Springar, but those things eventually died out. But what was the newer dance hall type of music, the schottische waltz, polka, became kind of the new folk dance music in this country, and American Scandinavians wrote new tunes in those styles. And just in the last 5-10 years, people like LeRoy LARSON and Phil Martin are finally recording some of these tunes and publishing them. And
in this little room here, this little furnace room, I run a record company out of here. It's called Banjar Records, and I've been making LPs with the Minnesota Scandinavian Ensemble. And then I have done, produced some records of other musicians like Viola Lee. Viola Lee is from Bruton, Minnesota, which is Stearns County, is west of here. And there was a very large settlement just in the corner of that county of Norwegians.
My great-grandfather and grandfather, who was 12 years old, came from Tudal in Telemark in 1848. And most of the members of the family played violin. And so I mainly learned them from my father. So most of this is just playing by ear. I don't read notes.
So when you listen to her accordion playing, it sounds fiddle. You can hear the fiddle ornaments, and all the little turns and twists and ornaments are fiddle.
I never played for dances. I don't think I could keep up with that, but a little bit for house dancing in the homes and then church programs mainly. I remember Reverend Svare was the minister in our country church, and I was about 10 or 12, and I'd been on a program and I played these old waltzes and tunes, and people were keeping time. And I think he rode home with us in the sled, horse and sled. And somebody remarked about that, and I guess that's what he had said, that was okay. As long, I was a young girl, and so that was fine to do this in church.
I started collecting this kind of music, Scandinavian or Norwegian-American music in 1969, and then when I was doing graduate work at the University of Minnesota, I had the opportunity to use some of this material. Then eventually I wrote a doctoral avhandling at the university. This material was written up in 2 volumes, completed in 1975. I had a lot of support. It's from people at the University of Minnesota, Dr. Marion Nelson and Dr. Alan Kagan were people that were interested in this type of a topic.
And from those first years here, LeRoy and I established a recording collection. We began transcriptions of the music, cataloging the music, putting together materials that future students would have for their understanding of the music of the Norwegians in Minnesota.
Hold sine høna på haugen utslette, høna så lett over haugen sprang. Folk kunne vel på høna fornemme, reven var ute med rumpa så lang. Klokk, 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 sa høna på haugen. Klokk, 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 sa høna på haugen. Håland sprang og brengde med augen, nu tør jeg ikke komme hjem til om år.
There was a dip from 1930 or so until 1950 or so, when a lot of that stuff almost disappeared. And now, of course, Norwegian Americans are very proud of their roots again, and they're working for it a lot. You can feel it in Minneapolis.
Do we have any extras that we can do a sound check on these?
I don't have any glasses yet, they're all behind now.
Oh. Will they get them before the broadcast?
I think Garrison Keillor belongs to the end of this dip. And so Garrison is a part of this thing coming up in which you begin again to think about the people you knew as a child, these Norwegian Americans. And instead of thinking of them as fools, you begin to think of their charm and their reality and so on.
Garrison Keillor blitt en folkehelt. Han har jo I flere år, så vidt som jeg vet, hatt et radioprogram som heter Prairie Home Companion, som begynte som et nokså regionalt program I Minnesota, men som nå blitt et nasjonalt amerikansk. Og hans bok, som kom ut vel I fjor, blitt en bestseller, og Garrison Keillor har diktet opp denne byen Wobegon, som han befolker med norske ungkarer, og med en norsk prest som pussig nok heter Enquist, og med et helt galleri av mennesker som har tilknytning til Skandinavia.
You're the daughter, the dad, TK, where's Tom? He's up.
Hi.
You got a copy of this? Okay. There's magic moments, they happen all the time on 1 Minute Romance, sponsored by Pork Brand Shoes. They squeak a little, but they don't sweat. It's a terrible fact that we all have to face as we get older. The fact that your death will not be nearly so dramatic to other people as it will be to you yourself. It can be fairly dramatic if you leave all your money to an odd beneficiary.
Dad left what? To who? The phone company?
But generally, survivors get over death much sooner than the deceased.
And weeping and gnashing. Dad, believe me, kids don't do that sort of thing anymore.
They don't?
No.
Okay, well, how about we say that for 30 days after my demise, you won't do a lot of shopping for clothes, okay?
Okay.
And in your grief, you cut back on television to, say, 3 hours a day, and cut down on the potato chips.
Great.
Jeg tror han har en veldig dyp respekt for dette småbymiljøet som han gjør narr av. Og de verdier som måtte finnes i en tid da mennesker hadde kanskje mer anledning til å sette seg ned og snakke over en kopp kaffe.
So I think that there's a lot of healing in what Garrison does. There's a healing of the new generation and the older generation.
Garrison Keillor grew up just down the road here, the next town, Anoka. Mel Brendan and I were on his program about 12 years ago. He had an early morning show, and it was just local, coming live out of St. Paul. But then now it's syndicated. It's so popular that all the national public radio stations carry this show. And I understand they're even bootlegging tapes to Norway.
90 đồng 30 cent sẽ được tặng một tách và một cây dù. 50 đồng sẽ được tặng một tách hoặc một cây dù và 35 đồng. Yêu cầu quý vị hãy gọi đến số điện thoại 721 5011 để biết thêm chi tiết.
You're listening to listener-supported KFAI, Minneapolis, St. Paul, the community alternative for the Twin Cities at 90.3 FM. Stay tuned now for the Scandinavian Cultural Hour.
The Scandinavian Cultural Hour is being brought to you today by Ingebretsen's Scandinavian Gifts and Records, located at 1601 East Lake Street in Minneapolis. I'm LeRoy LARSON. I'll be with you now for the next hour, playing Scandinavian music and Scandinavian American music. And Helge Lamo is here with me today also. It's Pledge Week, as you know. And how are those pledges coming in, Helge?
Well, we've had a few calls. Of course, we just started our show now, so let's hear from you. We are just waiting and waiting patiently. We have 2 people answering the phones, so don't hesitate to call us.
Well, yeah, I'm sure there's some Scandinavians that just tuned in for the Scandinavian Cultural Hour, and if you did, this is a good time for you now to make a pledge. I bet you there's a lot of Norwegians out there driving in their cars out on the highways and the gravel roads. And if you are, stop the car and just get out and run to the nearest phone. How about some music from North Dakota? And this is some good homemade music played on the diatonic button accordion. Edwin Morken is playing. We'll hear a couple tunes, I think. It's good dance music.
Have you been over to Norway yourself?
No, I hope I get to go soon, though. I have a lot of relatives over there.
now, and they'll enjoy the music.
Here's a fellow that stopped his pickup truck. John Hautala. You know John, don't you?
Yeah, he's Finnish.
Yes, he is. And he joined.
Okay.
Thank you very much, John, at the individual level. He's an individual, quite an individual.
I wonder what the Swedes are doing today.
Oh, they're out there probably picking corn.
They're probably counting their money right now. But give us a call and you can part with a little money now. Give us a pledge here.
Den skandinaviske timen I radioen, den har vi holdt på med I over 3 år nå, hver uke. En times program, hver tirsdag ettermiddag. Og den radiostasjonen ikke så sterk I watt, så den blir ikke sendt rundt så veldig langt, men det altså omegn, Minneapolis og St. Paul og omegn, som får den stasjonen inn. Og det jo over 1 million innbyggere likevel, så du har jo mye folk å ta av, vet du. Spend the barbershop? Would you like an appointment? Okay, God dag, Hans, du som I byen?
Ja. Vi får ha litt haircut I dag.
Litt haircut, litt hårklippet?
Litt hårklipp, ja.
Jeg hører du har vært en tur nede I Florida?
Ja, kom igjen I forrige uke.
Ja. Du ser noe god brun ut.
Det var litt for varmt nedi der.
Var det?
Ikke vant med varmen vi vet du.
Nei. Det jo...
Den foretrekker Minnesota, eller litt mer hillig det. Har litt mer landmark.
Jeg kom hit I 1954 og besøkte slektninger I Michigan. Og så endte jeg da her I Minneapolis. Vært her siden 61 og reiser frem og tilbake til Norge av og til og besøk da, vet du.
Det var ikke nok det.
Skal du en tur til Norge I sommer, eller?
Ikke I sommer, jeg var der I fjor.
Og du fra Trondheim, ikke sant? Var det sånn du sa?
Ja, derfra.
Jeg romsdaling, jeg vet du.
Ja.
Musikken, det noe som jeg bestandig har vært interessert I. Jeg spilte noen år før jeg kom hit til Amerika, og fortsatte med det når jeg kom hit. Danna orkester I 60-åra, og spilte rundt omkring her I Minneapolis siden I den tida. Og jeg synes det veldig interessant å holde ved like den skandinaviske musikken.
Helgi has always played for dances. I think he called me once and asked me if I would play banjo, and so I played with his orchestra for a while. And then shortly after that, we added Mel Brendan and others and called ourselves the Minnesota Scandinavian Ensemble.
This is Snurren Polka.